Please. Great. So what we're going to do is we hope this can be really interactive. We have a good group of people here, lots of great experts. We're going to have an overview by David Chu from CalCerts on what this is all about, what's happening, what we are here to understand about the new code update in HERS. We'll then go into kind of the history of HERS so we can all have a good foundation of where we've been. And that's going to be done by Cassie from Frontier. And then we're going to go into a panel with four great folks, one person from CalCerts, one person from Cheers, and then a couple of actual folks who do this work on a daily basis to really understand what is the future of HERS. And that's really where we're going to have a lot of interaction. We're going to invite all of you in the audience to give us questions. And then we're going to have a little bit about sort of what's the next steps and where do we go from here. And then we'll wrap it up. We don't have a set break in here, so if we recognize if you got to run off our quickie and come back, you're good. Just go ahead and do that because it's kind of funny otherwise in our day to do that. So please feel free to make a quick jump on that. Next slide. Yeah, that's me. I'm just going to give you a quick I think maybe all of you may have seen Zoom before. You might have been on it before, but not in case you haven't, a couple of quick things. One of the things that's great is if you want to, on your picture, you have three little dots to show up in the upper right-hand corner. If you right-click on that, you can change and put your name and your organization right there, and that's what everyone can know who you are. It's kind of helpful. Make sure to keep your thing on mute so we don't hear any barking dogs or cats and other things out there. Use the chat liberally. We really love to hear comments a little bit back and forth. If there's comments that where someone's doing a presentation, we can make sure to check that and then come back to it and answer that question. And that really just helps on the conversation as a whole. So really encourage you to use that chat. And if you want to talk, especially in the panel time, please go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you and you can ask your questions, and our great group here will be happy to answer that if they can. If not, we'll figure out how to answer it later on. We are going to be recording this today so that we can post it for others to see it down the line and learn as well in case they couldn't be here today. All right, I think that's about it. Next slide. All right, before we go to this, I think we have one more. Let's go backwards. Sorry, Cassie. Jordan, I think we have one other poll here, another question we were going to ask all of you, which is, we just want to sort of like get a poll of how often do you interact with the HERS rater? And obviously, if you're a HERS rater, that would be daily. But go ahead and just put it in your note here, and just for fun and games. I see Mike smiling because they're like, yeah, I interact with myself every single day. And luckily, we don't have any who the heck is a HERS rater yet, so. And it's great to see, like, as we're thinking about this and where we're going and these changes, I'm seeing up on my screen the results here. And so just, I'm not sure if we can show that poll to everybody else. We have pretty much everybody has answered it. Most people are doing it monthly. About 38% of you guys do it monthly. And then the other ones are kind of weekly and daily, and a couple just annually. So we have a good group of folks here in all of this. All right. I think we can stop sharing that. All right, so let's get moving on into our program. I want to have David Chu from CalCerts come and join us here. He's a licensed mechanical contractor. He's been working since with CalCerts as a rater since 2011. And he has conducted thousands of HERS verifications and has worked a lot with different contractors as both a rater and a QA reviewer. So he's going to provide us his unique perspective on the energy code and how the real world intersect. So David, let me hand it over to you and take us away.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to share my screen really quick. Give me one sec. Great. Can everybody see that? It says 3C REN CalCerts California 2025 field verification.
Yes, we can, sir.
Excellent. Glad everybody could join us. I'm grateful. I mean, I think we're all grateful that you took the time out of your probably very busy schedules to come here and listen to this 3C REN regional forum. As everybody said, my name is David Chu. I'm the compliance director at CalCerts. I've been in energy code enforcement for over a dozen years, and I've seen it grow. I've seen it change, and it's really been an amazing, I guess, ride. One of my duties at CalSTRS is to train building departments, right? I help decipher code. I figure out how to simplify all of this. So previous to my coming to work at CalCerts, I was a licensed contractor, but I also worked in test and balance. So that might resonate with some of you. I was a HERS rater, and it's all very interesting and it's all interconnected, right? Now, so I've seen this from a few different viewpoints. Now, I was asked to go over some of the changes with Title 24 Part 6 and how it relates to energy code enforcement. I think there's quite a few of you here who are building inspectors or involved in that capacity. So hopefully this will all resonate with you. What we're going to discuss today are some pretty significant changes, right, to how the HERS program is going to be implemented in the next code cycle. The changes are big, okay, and they're really different from past code cycles. Um, some of it will affect code officials and plan checkers, but for the most part, it's really going to affect how raters operate and how oversight of the entire program is, I guess, administered. So let me go to the next slide. All right, so 2025 changes to mandatory measures and efficiency. So let's start with some of the simpler stuff. The next few slides, they're about what our staff found noteworthy to pay attention to regarding HERS measures, efficiency requirements, like who does what testing, right? That's some of the questions that get asked us by AHJs or building departments. There's a lot more changes coming up, but these are the ones that caught our attention. So for new construction, this is the first one. A lot of people are talking about this. They're replacing the compliance metric. Everybody knows it used to be EDR, right? EDR was the estimated energy use calculation, right, compared to a 2006 IECC home. So everything was compared to that, right? The CEC is proposing a new metric called LSC, and it's the projected value of costs over a 30-year period. So to put it simply, before the idea was that a building had to be designed, right, to use less energy than allowed, right? They set that kind of standard. You got to use less than this, and it's a bunch of funky numbers. So now it's the concept is that it's the cost of energy usage of a building. It has to be less than what's allowed. So, it's been explained to me and some of us basically that the old metric was just too hard for normal people to understand. So they're going to translate it all into dollars, right? Into dollar amounts. So I figured sounds good. So from the standpoint of plan check or building inspectors, nothing's really changed from your perspective. If the energy plan is registered with the provider, it means it's gone through all the checks that it needs to go through to make sure that the plan is compliant. And energy modeling software, it won't produce an energy model if it doesn't comply. So for you, it doesn't really make a big difference. Now here's some mandatory wall insulation minimums. There's some changes to that. U factors are more stringent in the upcoming code cycle, like for 2x4 framing. U factor of 0.095 is required, which is the equivalent of an R15 cavity insulation, right? And 2x4 wood framed assembly. Now, I think previously it was still 0.095, but it was only certain climate zones. Now I think they're proposing that it's everywhere, all of California. Right now, for 2x6 or greater, the U factor is going to be 0.069 with an equivalent R21 cavity insulation. Now, keep in mind, everybody knows the difference between mandatory, prescriptive, performance, all that. These are mandatory requirements. There are still prescriptive requirements that go above all this, right, which often will require some kind of exterior insulation panel or something like that, right, to meet that prescriptive requirement. The other thing to note is that this is across the board, not just single family, but also low-rise multifamily. Okay, so if you look up top, section 150.0H, or the mandatory space conditioning equipment requirements, What they did, the CC is proposing, is that load calculation requirements get loosened a little bit. For example, for additions, they're now going to allow block loads. Another thing that's changed is that they're going to allow for more design conditions, right, to do load calcs, right? I think J2 used to be the only design condition allowed in California, and a lot of people, I think, complained about that because it's a lot more stringent, I think, than some of the others, right? So the updated regulation, a designer can now use the ASHRAE handbook, the SMACNA Residential Standards Manual, and of course, ACA Manual J, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. So that's changed. Oh, there's going to be updates to heat pump regulations. I guess what stood out is that there's a proposal to further regulate supplemental heating. I mean, it makes sense, right? As the state and the feds drive the idea of using heat pumps, right, over furnaces, in order to keep them efficient, the design has to be well done. And everybody knows that heating strips aren't exactly like super efficient. I think they might be one of the most inefficient things on the planet. So I on purpose, right? So I believe there's a bunch of new code regulating supplemental or what other people call emergency heating. There's some changes to HERS testing. So we're finally going to have multi-point testing for blower doors. I don't know if this means a lot to the folks here. It does to the raters that are here, though, and builders. Previously, only single point testing was allowed. So basically what that means is that there's an automatic 10% penalty for any blower door test. So by having multi-point testing, that removes the penalty, sort of. If you know a lot about blower door testing, you know that that may not be the case. But anyway, there's going to be multi-point testing. Okay, so this is great. The CC is proposing to change when refrigerant charge testing happens in mechanical changeouts, right? Or alterations. What a lot of people know, people go in just existing houses, they change out the air conditioner. So previously, it was only required in climate zones 2, 8 through 15. Right now, when a heat pump is installed, refrigerant charge testing is going to be required in all climate zones. So this is specific to heat pumps, right? We have to remember that heating, we're actually heating as well as we're cooling using that heat pump. So the efficiency is super important. Like a furnace is a very different beast, right? It doesn't have to be that efficient. It's going to heat up that house. But when it comes to a heat pump, it's got to be efficient to heat up the house. Now, I think here in 3C REN territory, this might be a new thing. I imagine a large part of 3C REN territory doesn't have a lot of refrigerant charge testing. I'm not certain, but I think that's how it is here. However, the other system types like, standard condenser coil setups that aren't heat pumps, everything's the same as it was before. Nothing changes. It's still climate zones 2, 8 through 15. So I don't know if that's going to matter much to 3C REN territory. Multifamily. Multifamily measures are changing a bit. The first one that caught our eye is how IAQ, right, or ventilation requirements are being handled. So, previous code required that the dwelling in a multifamily building, right, either has balanced ventilation or it can have supply or exhaust only ventilation, right? But if you have supply or exhaust only ventilation, you also have to pass a blower door, right? So put that in different words. So before you could have an exhaust only fan, a fart fan, right? But if you did that, you also had to pass a blower door for every dwelling, right? Or previously, you could just have balanced ventilation and not do a blower door test. That's how the code was in previous code cycles, or at least the last code cycle. Now, this upcoming code cycle proposal is that you can have balanced or supply ventilation, right? But the blower door is always going to be required. So whatever you do, the blower door is going to be required. So that's just going to be part of multifamily, the world of multifamily, compartmentalization, basically. And also, they got rid of exhaust-only ventilation in multifamily. So, the days of the fart fan, being the ventilation are gone. Although you probably still want that, yeah, in your bathroom. Yeah, you do. And finally, we have a new multifamily mandatory HERS measure proposed. The proposal is that all multifamily buildings are going to require HERS inspections of the water pipe installation. So that's new. That's very interesting. We're very curious to see how that's going to play out, given how buildings are constructed. But that's another proposal. So, with that, let's go into non-res and multifamily. There are changes to who can do or who has to do the diagnostic testing, right? Everybody knows ATTs are also part of this whole world. We're not an ATT, but they have a part to play in this. So for non-residential, hotel, motel, multifamily, common areas, right? It's no longer required that both ATT and HERS do the duct test, right? Now only ATT is supposed to do it. That we thought was interesting. However, in multifamily, only the HERS rater can do the testing. Okay, so uh, again, it's non-res, hotel, motel, multifamily, common areas, right? Not the dwellings, common areas, ATT. Multifamily, HERS. Um, excuse me, for high-rise multifamily, the proposal is that only HERS raters can test the ventilation or conduct blower doors. I actually think that kind of makes sense. ATT is no longer allowed to do these tests. These are the tests that HERS raters excel at. So, there's a lot more changes than what I just reviewed here. These are just some of the ones that caught our eye and we thought might be interesting to you. With that, uh, I thought we'd go into rebranding and restructuring of the entire thing. So this is the big deal. What we have in the next few slides, it's a little review of the proposed rebranding and restructuring of the entire HERS program as we know it. Now, there's a lot more to what I'm going to go over here. I'm going to try to keep it pretty basic, but know that there's a ton more. Okay, so easy stuff. There's a proposal to rebrand. So to explain, the term HERS rater, it's really used for two different services, right? One is a whole house rater, right? These folks operate kind of like, if any of you know ResNet nationally, right? These raters go into buildings, they take down what's built, right? They use software and they determine the overall efficiency of a home, right? And they give it a score. It's entirely voluntary. It has nothing to do with what we do, code compliance, right? And then there is what the commission dubbed FVDT, right? Or Field Verification Diagnostic Testing HERS raters, right? Uh, this is the one we're all familiar with, right? I mean, they're special inspectors and they assist building departments in enforcing energy code. It's a mandatory thing and required by law. So the Energy Commission is proposing that anything to do with the mandatory code compliance inspections, right? The stuff that we all do together now, that it be renamed from HERS to ECC. And ECC stands for Energy Code Compliance. So what you previously knew as HERS raters are going to be ECC raters, right? And HERS providers will be ECC providers. Now, the whole house raters, though, they're still there. They're going to continue to be referred to as HERS raters. Since it's a voluntary program that has little to do with code compliance, they don't want to touch it. Think of it this way. So CalCert, for example, oops, let me go back. Wrong way. Yeah, so basically, CalCert is going to be both a HERS provider, right, the whole house thing, per the Title 20 regulations, and we will also be an ECC provider, right, for energy code enforcement, right? So there are two different things. So all that CC is really proposing to do is kind of separate the two programs because they're receiving I think they're receiving complaints that it was confusing. All right, so another thing is changing. Up until now, raters have always operated as individuals. I've always thought that was interesting. The new code language is proposing that rater companies be officially recognized. But in truth, I mean, there's always been companies, right? Rater companies, everybody knows them, but they were never actually officially recognized in the code. There's new rules, right? Establishing the requirements to be a HERS rater company, like from training, different people need to be trained different ways to quality assurance requirements, to the oversight that they have to oversee their own raters. That's part of it, in addition to what we do as providers. So it's just a slightly different paradigm, right? Stakeholders are And a lot of times, stakeholders are going to be dealing with rater companies as opposed to the actual individual raters. But that doesn't mean the individual rater is gone. They can operate on their own. Conflict of interest rules have expanded significantly. Providers, rater companies, they have to operate independently from the builder, designer, that's important, or subcontractor as the responsible person. Okay, so what the CEC is saying, they're further clarifying who can do ratings for who. Like, uh, if it's your cousin, can you do HERS ratings for them? Right? If your dad's a general contractor, can you do his HERS ratings? If you look at the second main bullet point, it clearly lists who can conduct field verification diagnostic testing or HERS ratings for whom, right? Now, if you read it, essentially it's stating that a provider, rater company, raters or principals shall not perform FVDT for anyone that's related to them by blood or law. Okay, so I think the intent's pretty clear. Like if you're a rating firm, and you have close family ties to an installer, like, maybe you're married to them or something in some fashion, you can no longer be their HERS rater, right? Now, the third bullet point, that's always been the rule. Like, to clarify, it says that a rater can't perform construction activity, right? That includes fixing ducts, right? Sealing boots, adding refrigerant to the systems. Now, they're not supposed to do that. So if you as a code official come across this, please let the providers know, because we need to have a conversation. All right, so there's a new consumer information form requirement. This is interesting. For every project that happens in California, a consumer information form needs to be registered by the rater or rater company, right, with the provider and given to the homeowner. The form, it basically has to include an explanation as to what's being done, like what kind of testing is going to happen in this house, what kind of energy code inspections will happen, along with the roles and responsibilities of everybody involved in a project. So, the goal, I think, is to educate homeowners on what all of this is, because a lot of them are really confused. I think the idea is to reduce the idea that the rater installer can be from the same company. I think there's that concern because everybody knows they can't, right? The idea is that the rater is a third-party inspector, right? Now, another requirement is for valid contact info for the purpose of scheduling QA. What this basically is they're saying, hey, HERS rater companies, you need to make sure that the providers don't have to chase people around to get and do a QA. We need to be able to access these houses right away. It just means that if it's not recorded for every house perfectly, it becomes a QA violation, right? And then the rater, and now the rater company, can get in trouble. Okay, rater of record. This is big. Okay, so we actually recommended this because it's one of the biggest complaints from raters, right? It's that the second they fail an installer or builder, right, and they issue corrections, right, they never get a call back. Right? And then a few weeks later, they find out the project was completed by somebody else, right? So the new rule is that if a rater takes the time to register the failure, right, at a provider, the project can no longer be moved to another rating company. It's with that rater and that rating company forever. Okay. Well, with the exceptions that if the rater of record agrees to release a project, or they're physically unable to continue work on a project, they're suspended, decertified, or the rater just doesn't want to do it, right? And that's happened. And so in order for this to work, the rater has to, number one, register the failed test. And then the provider, right, us or CalSource or Cheers, we're then required to lock it so it can't be completed in another rated company, right? Now, if someone somehow gets around this restriction or there's evidence of it, all one has to do is tell us. You tell the provider, and we file a complaint and request an investigation from the CEC. So the CEC has told us that they're going to manage all that. They will do the investigations at all providers to figure out what's actually going on. Now, this is pretty serious because if you think about it, the rater company, and there's an investigation, the provider can also be disciplined if the CEC finds something, right, naughty was happening. So really, the hope is that that this just kind of goes away. The idea of people trying to find raters that are not doing it right. I think that's the politically correct way of saying it. Not doing accurate and complete inspections. Okay, so this is huge, sampling. If you're a builder and you do sampling, or if you're a HJ and you know there's sampling going on in your city or your jurisdiction, this is important. Okay, this will completely change how the industry operates. So first, we think sampling was removed from alterations entirely. Okay, so mechanical changeouts, not 100% certain, but I think it is that way. Another change, and it's a big change, is with production housing, right? As we understand it, for every project on every seventh sample group, so, right, every seventh sample group of a project, there needs to be two QAs. The tested lot and a sample lot has to be QA'd by the provider. So imagine the builder gets to the seventh sample group of a community, it means nothing can move forward until at least two homes in that community pass the QA by the provider. That includes the house that was not tested by the rater. All of these needs to be inspected and passed. Now, where I thought it was even more interesting is that I think the code says if a builder doesn't allow access for the provider for QA, then every lot moving forward in that community must be 100% tested. There can be no more sampling in the community. So this is a pretty significant change that CC is proposing. It's going to impact raters, providers, builders, homeowners, potentially home sales, certificate of occupancy, escrow, right? Because what if the documentation can't move forward? So this is something that you might want to look into, if anything. Okay, so here's another new concept, and this kind of relates to the previous one. It's called conflicted data, right? It's an entirely new idea in the code. So what is it? It's basically any data collected by a rater, right? They register documentation where they have a conflict of interest, right? Regardless if the data is perfect, it's considered conflicted, right? Or it's any data collected through sampling where QA is not allowed to get into the house. That's conflicted. Any data that was recorded by the rater that is not truthful and accurate. Okay, so that one's obvious, right? That's conflicted. So basically, when somebody is naughty and they didn't follow all the rules, it means that their certs are no longer valid. Okay. So the really interesting part of this is that the code says that the provider, right, we have to notify the homeowner, the rater company, the building department, and the CC that the certificates are invalid. That's as far as the code language goes, but we're supposed to tell all of you. Okay, so what everybody does with that, nobody knows. I suppose it's up to you, especially the HJs. So, this is a lot of stuff that I went over in a short period of time. This kind of wraps up what we thought would have the most impact on code enforcement, right, from a procedural standpoint. But, so everything I went over is regarding what's called the 45-day language for the 2025 Energy Code. Some of you know that for code language to be produced, it takes a lot of steps. There's a lot of commenting periods. And what I'm saying with this 45-day language is that we're nearly at the finish line. So the comment period for what you just heard, what I just presented, it's over. That ended 2 days ago, I think. But last Monday it ended. So they're not receiving any more comments with it. But it's not too late. That's not what it means. Okay, it's not too late. There's another round called 15-day language, right? They're going to look at everything we said during these last 45 days. They're going to consider it, talk to attorneys, talk to whatever experts, and they're going to create another round of language where this language comes out. It's going to be called a 15-day language. And then once that's published, everybody here, you have 15 days to comment. And if you make a really good case, right, then the commission will consider another 15-day comment period. And once that 15-day comment period is done, that's it. This is the energy code for 2025. So I think that's pretty much it.
That's awesome, David. We have one hot question we'll get to, and we might have room for one more because we're just a few minutes behind. But Nico asked, when you're beginning of your presentation, you called the energy plan. Is that applicable in the residential context? And if so, what does that mean?
The energy plan? Do you mean the difference between LSC and EDR?
Nico, do you want to talk up here and explain what you were asking about for that?
Yeah, man, it was a while ago. Uh, I can't say I really know either of those, so maybe illustrating both of those would be good.
I'm guessing you're talking about this, the first at the very beginning, right?
Yeah,
Long-term
yeah.
system cost versus EDR. So this only applies to new construction. So if you are involved in new construction, what happens is folks take all they design a house, right? And they put different windows, different walls, different amount of insulation, different kind of air conditioners, and they have to meet a certain threshold. So the commission says you need to meet this EDR level. In other words, this is how much energy you can use. And then the software, these energy consultants, they put all these things in the software, and it spits out a number. And if it's compliant, if that proposed house uses less energy than that requirement by the state, then it complies. So that's all a bunch of numbers, right? So what the Energy Commission is proposing is they're going to change that from being this EDR score of, whatever, 0.2 and 3, because nobody knows what that means. They're going to change that to reflect money, right? What is the overall cost of these energy? What is the overall energy cost over a 30-year period of time? So that's the proposal. It's going to be the same thing, except they're going to equate it to money. I don't, I think, is that it,
Gotcha.
Nico? Yeah, yeah.
That answers. So what I'm hearing is not the mechanical plans, but the energy plans being maybe like the certificates of compliance and
That's exactly it. That's right.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
that's exactly it. Yeah, yeah.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I think you could stop sharing your screen, David.
All
We'll get
right.
more into it when you join us on the panel. So thank you. I want to now turn it over, and Cassie, you can go ahead and share your screen again to Cassie Sonnet from Frontier Energy. So she's a consultant there with Frontier Energy, and she leads the codes and standards training and education within the Inland Empire, which is San Bernardino and Riverside, for those who are not familiar with that. And she brings this deep experience with the energy sector and helping with jurisdictions on policy. So she's going to give us, we just heard like where we're going, and we're going to kind of step back now and say where we've been. So the history of HERS. Cassie, take it away.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. David's presentation was super interesting. Definitely sets a standard for me. So I hope this presentation can provide some good information for you as well. As Mindy said, we're going to talk about the history of HERS from its establishment up until today, basically, so that we all have a good grounding of what to expect going forward as we process the 2025 code changes that David was referring to. So the concept of HERS rating, if you Google it, is pretty straightforward. It's all about comparing the energy efficiency or energy use of different homes against each other. What you'll miss, though, with a quick Google is an example of California being special, because California loves to be special and lead by example for the whole country. So California actually had the concept of HERS before it was a thing anywhere else in the United States. So that was established in 1992, and it was at the time called the California Home Energy Rating System, or CHERS. It was developed back then primarily to provide cost effectiveness calculations for energy efficiency mortgages. An energy efficiency mortgage, which is also called an EEM, is a loan for purchasing or refinancing a home that meets certain energy efficiency requirements, or for improving a home to make it more energy efficient. At first, houses were rated on a scale of 1 to 100, where higher was better. So you wanted to get the highest score possible. With this scale, a house that completely met the energy code and didn't go any further got an 80, and a home that was 15% better than code got an 85. So this whole process was funded in part by the CEC, but the CEC hadn't actually started regulating it yet at this time. In 2006, AB 32, also known as the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006, prompted a bigger look at the possibility of increasing energy efficiency in homes, because they were trying to figure out how can we lower emissions and energy use in California. At that time, HERS raters were created who could do field verification and diagnostic testing services to help the local building departments confirm compliance to the energy code. So fast forward to 2008. In this environment, California really started to see the need for a more consistent and standardized method of home energy rating systems, which helped develop the HERS program even further. HERS at this point in time existed nationwide, but don't worry, California is still special. At that time in California, HERS regulations were updated to cover whole house home energy ratings of existing and newly constructed homes. And the purpose of that was to create a consistent, uniform rating system for the whole state. At this point in time, the CEC also developed software such as Energy Pro and CBEC that were able to aid HERS raters in this goal. And this really started to generate a feeling that the HERS ratings meant something and could provide reliable recommendations on cost-effective energy efficiency measures. Over the next few years, up till 2011 and beyond, the HERS program continued to grow in California. The CEC developed materials, including a pamphlet, which you can see some screenshots of here, explaining the benefit of getting a HERS rating. Their argument was basically that you wouldn't buy a car or sell a car without knowing its mileage per gallon. So why would you buy a house or sell a house without knowing what the energy bills might look like? The good news is that it's a lot easier to make your existing home energy efficient than it is to increase your car's mileage per gallon in a meaningful way. So as the CEC said, if you currently owned a home, you could also benefit by identifying cost-effective energy efficiency upgrades, and there were federal tax credits available at that time that you could potentially net if you did those upgrades. Coming with all this was a new HERS scale. So they did away with the 0 to 100 scale and instead came up with the 0 to 250 scale, where lower is better. So now instead of wanting to be getting 100, you want to be getting close to a 0. The way it works is that the HERS index compares your home or proposed home to a standard home, also called a reference home, that has a score of 100. And that reference home will have the baseline that's similar in size, shape, and climate zone of your proposed house. Basically, the reference home will be a baseline. And if your home has a lower HERS score than the reference home, then it's more energy efficient. It's really common in California for houses to have lower scores, often under 100, because once again, California is special and we just like doing these things. All right, so now we've talked some about the history of HERS, but this begs a really important question of why HERS is important. If we're going to spend all this time, if you're here at this forum, if we're paying attention to what the CEC is doing in the 2025 code cycle, why do we care? In this current state, the HERS program is important for several reasons. The first is that it provides an assessment of a building's energy efficiency by an independent third party that is regulated by the CEC. And we saw with some of the code changes that David mentioned that they're really honing in on this idea of clear independence and having a third party doing these verifications. HERS measures ensure compliance with the energy code. That matters from both a legal and an ethical perspective. HERS is essentially quality assurance for homeowners that their house is meeting code. And as a contractor or a developer, HERS makes sure that the subcontractors are held responsible for what they installed. For people in the building department, HERS verification makes it easier for them to on other code verification necessities, since we know there's always a lot to check. Since the HERS raters have specialized knowledge, specifically in what they're testing and verifying. It also has the same benefits for homeowners that we saw in the previous slide back in 2011 that the CEC has always claimed. It increases the resale value of your house. It helps homes qualify for energy efficiency rebates and tax credits. And it's worth noting now that the tax credits are no longer just from the federal government, but many utility companies also now offer incentives for energy efficiency homes. And in general, it just makes homes a better place to live, because improving energy efficiency usually translates to better indoor comfort. Proper insulation, efficient HVAC systems, and sealed ductwork contribute to a healthier living environment. And it also means that if a homeowner spends money on an energy-related project, like say installing a new HVAC system, they will actually get the promised benefits, because you can install a really fancy HVAC system, and if it fails the HERS test, it has to be fixed by the contractor. And so HERS is important to make sure that gets done, because otherwise someone can spend a lot of money on a really fancy system and end up with no benefits if it's installed incorrectly, which doesn't tend to leave anyone too happy. At this point in time, I've hopefully convinced you that the HERS program is important. If not, it's legally required for a lot of projects, so you should probably keep listening anyway. HERS test will apply to many projects, including but not limited to any new construction home or advanced dwelling ADU, additional dwelling unit, any addition over 1,000 square feet, any addition or alteration involves adding or replacing an AC condenser, an AC coil, an air handler, or 40 feet more of duct. There's also 4 metrics, which are duct measures, heating and cooling equipment, mechanical ventilation measures, and building envelope measures. So each measure can be broken down into more steps. So if we're looking at just duct measures and nothing else, HERS raters have to verify that approved materials are being used and do diagnostic testing for duct sealing. Second, they must verify that the duct system is installed according to design, which includes location, size, length of ducts, and installation R value. Verify that duct location is entirely in conditioned space and test for maximum leakage. And finally, confirm return duct design and zonally controlled systems to comply with relevant code language. There's similar step-by-step processes for heating and cooling equipment, mechanical ventilations, and building envelope measures, but you don't want to listen to me all day, so we will leave that just as an example, but know that there are similar processes for these other metrics. So now that we know a bit about the history of HERS and what HERS testers do, how does this all fit into the building permitting process? Well, I would argue that the best time to get a HERS rater going in the project is at the beginning. And this is so they can inform the contractor about when they need to perform inspections and testing. And that kind of coordination can matter a lot more than might be apparent at first glance. So for example, quality insulation installation has the highest failure rate of all HERS measures. And if that insulation gets covered up before the HERS rater inspects it, that results in an automatic failure. Well, as we just talked about, contractors must correct anything that fails a HERS test, but the HERS rater only sees covered insulation. That leaves 2 options. The first is the contractor removes all the drywall, which is very expensive, or they attempt to create an energy model for the building that complies without quality insulation installation, which is often impossible and definitely very expensive. So having that good communication from the start between the rater, installer, and contractor, and having the rater inspect the project thoroughly during construction is really highly recommended. And this will also typically result in less change orders. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that since you're stuck with them, I recommend you get to know your local HERS raters and develop good relationships with them. We saw at the beginning the icebreaker poll that some of you guys are still only on that monthly or annual basis. I think, hopefully you guys are doing the weekly visits. HERS raters get along well. But at the end of the day, it'll make life easier for everyone involved in the building process if the HERS raters, the contractors, the building department are all communicating with each other. And at the end of the day, everyone in this process has the same goal, which is to provide the customer with a good energy code compliant house. So let's briefly dive into everyone's favorite part of any process, which is forms. There are a lot of forms for HERS. Just to walk through the basics, the registration process is generally initiated by the energy consultant or compliance documentation author. And that process requires the owner or contractor to establish an account with the HERS provider to approve the documentation before a registered CF1R may be printed. And that's step 1 in the process and should be completed in a timely manner to avoid delays for the rest of the whole process. Once the CF1R has been approved and signed off by all responsible parties, it's ready to be printed and submitted to the building department. The registered compliance documents typically contain a unique registration number, date and time, and the name of the HERS provider at the bottom of each page. So that tells the building department that the documents are registered properly. If any changes occur to the scope of work, the CF1R will need to be revised, registered, and resubmitted to the building department for approval. I will say at this point, hopefully you're aware of both shares and CalCerts, since the speakers are here from them. But shout out, their registries are really nifty, since they're a database that generates, tracks, and scores all documents for a registered project. And anyone involved in that process can track its development, including the building department. So also, I should point out that our whole conversation here has been about residential buildings. There are different documents for non-residential buildings. Once again, you get lucky. We have limited time, so I won't be going into getting into those. I do want to briefly touch on the fact that with each type of form, there's a further breakdown between building type and measure being inspected. So if we look at just the CF1R, which is the certificate of compliance, there's lots of different forms depending on the approach, the project, and more. So you get certificates of compliance for when the performance approach is used, when the prescriptive approach is used, when it's newly constructed homes and additions over 1,000 square feet or additions less than 1,000 square feet. And it goes on and on like this. This covers the CF1Rs, and there are similar document patterns for CF2Rs and CF3Rs. Just a note, luckily this is all laid out pretty clearly. If you look at your compliance documents, Appendix A, you can usually find what you're looking for there. Now that we've reviewed the forms, we'll talk just a bit about how they fit into the project flow and completion. I will say that there's no one size fits all. What I have here on the slide is just 5 important points to keep in mind. The first is pretty simple. Make sure that all CF1Rs are registered and never accept unregistered forms. The second is to make sure the forms are registered with the right jurisdiction. So there might be a case when it needs to be registered with the county instead of the city, or the city instead of the county, things like that. So make sure that they're registered where they need to be. And for all projects that could potentially have HERS tests, if someone says that there's an exemption and the HERS test doesn't need to be done for whatever measure, make sure you confirm that that is valid and do your due diligence in checking that. Coordinating plan checking, field inspections, as I said earlier, really important to make that process flow smoothly. So I think that deserves some emphasis again. And before closing out the project, double check that all the forms are complete and in the registry. Hopefully this presents a pretty straightforward process for keeping the building department involved and keeping those communication chains open. And here we are with our last slide. So I must confess that the catchy title does not come from me, but from a very helpful HERS rater that I spoke to when I was pulling all this together. What I learned from him and just from general experience is that at the end of the day, the HERS rater is often responsible for bringing people up to speed on code issues and best practices, while also explaining to builders, contractors, and homeowners why they're there and how the energy code works. Some building departments are really focused on health and safety measures and not as much on energy code compliance. So that leaves the HERS rater out of the process, and they may need to explain or justify their own position to those building departments to make sure energy code compliance is met. On the flip side, sometimes building departments, are very down to the detail and want to make sure that every single box gets checked off, even if some things might be slightly repeated or anything like that. They want to see 100% green check mark, all good. And HERS raters can really be the person to ensure that that gets done and the building department has, full safe knowledge that these measures were properly tested. They can also help contractors working without a computer and uploading documents with signature authority, which can also be another helpful part of the process. I will say that as HERS raters gather experience, they start to be able to adapt to different situations that crop up in the field. And this is why part of our panel includes some people who are very experienced HERS raters. For example, David talked a little bit about sampling the 2025 code. I'm going to pull us back to where sampling is now and say that, currently if there's 7 houses of the same design, so usually you're thinking subdivisions without custom homes, all are self-tested by the installer, and then the HERS rater randomly selects a home for testing. If it passes, all the houses in that group pass, which sounds pretty straightforward, but there are potential problems. One that I've seen is that QII is sometimes done by different contractors, and that can be done to different quality if it's not the same people doing it. And that's an actual potential problem because the installation industry has a lot of turnover. And this is the kind of awareness that HERS Rater builds by time out in the field that allows them to provide that best possible service to the contractors, building departments, and homeowners. Sometimes the only way to learn is not to sit and listen to people like me, but to learn by doing for many more hours. That being said, when you're doing your book learning, please do use trusted resources such as the CEC, Energy Code ACE, and of course 3C REN to ensure you're looking at accurate and up-to-date information. So I'll just conclude by saying that if you're going to take anything away from this presentation, it should be that HERS Raters have served and will continue to serve a valuable purpose in ensuring that homes in California are energy efficient and compliant with the Energy Code. The program will continue to adapt to meet changing needs as time goes on, but really it all comes back to this. Everyone on the building project has the same goal: to provide homeowners with the best building construction possible. HERS Raters play an important role in accomplishing that, but it requires everyone working together to make it possible to produce a satisfactory final result for homeowners. I think kind of holding hands and saying we all got to work together is the max amount of sappiness you can put into a presentation around compliance to the Energy Code. So I'll wrap things up there. Thank you.
Awesome, Cassie. Let's see. I have a quick thanks, David. You get the cheers. Have a quick moment here. If anybody had a question for Cassie, let's see. A couple comments in the chats, but I don't see any questions, which means I think we could probably move on to our panel, because I think that's where we're going to be able to knit together what David started off with, what those changes are, and where that history and how do we merge the two for the future. But before that, we're going to have a quick poll. You'll see if you were listening carefully to what Cassie said. Cassie, do you want to lead us through that poll?
Yes, I do. So the first question is, what is the most frequently failed HERS measure? I mentioned it multiple times and also has a catchy acronym. So hopefully you remember that. The second one is, which came first, the 1 to 100 scale or the 0 to 250 scale? This is a fun one because you can know that both of those exist and not necessarily remember which came when. And then the final one is, what California Act propelled HERS to prominence? And we've got a few different option choices here, including the Shining Act, which is my personal guest. That room 237 really got this going. I'll let the poll. We've got about 36% of people participating, so I'll just give it another few seconds before we end the poll and see how you guys did.
And while that's happening, David, Rob, Javier, and Mike, if you can make sure you are on camera and looking good, have your nose powdered, we're gonna bring you guys up in just a second, and start our panel.
Perfect. So we got about half of the people here participating. So let's end the poll and share the results.
I'm so curious what
Oh, it
people
doesn't.
think.
Well, it's short answers, so it's not showing me what people answered.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think me and
Bummer.
Rob might know.
But
Uh-oh.
we have to send it to you afterwards. Did people get number 3 right? We had a kind of mix of your.
I don't think so. Well, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it looks like 7 out of 10 of the 10 participants got AB 32, which is right.
All right. Awesome. So we can stop sharing. Well, let me just first, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves so you can see them, and they're going to talk about themselves for a second. So we can go ahead and stop sharing. Fantastic. All right. So we're going to move into our panel here. And I first want to have each one of my panelists introduce themselves and just really kind of talk about who they are, what they're working on, and then tell us what is your favorite HERS measure to just start us going here. So I'm going to start with Mike Little and go to Javier, and then I'm going to go then to Rob and then David. Mike?
No pressure, huh? I get to go
Yeah.
first. My name's
You got
Mike
it.
Little. I'm a HERS rater in Southern California. I work on the maybe the eastern edges of Orange County up to Santa Barbara. And my favorite HERS measure? I don't have a favorite. I don't know.
Okay, we'll come back to you. You have to come up with a good answer, Mike.
Oh, okay.
Javier.
Hi, everyone. My name is Javier Salcedo. I'm a general contractor, HERS rater, and home performance professional. I work in the county of Ventura, in all the areas right next to, I guess. I guess my favorite measure would be QII. It does kind of follows the training that I done with BPIs and home performance. So that's probably the best, the one that I kind of enjoy checking.
Nice. Rob.
Yeah, my name's Rob Starr. I'm here with Cheers, and have worn many hats over the years. First got certified as a HERS rater back in 2002. So quite a long while ago, back before really HERS was code required. Back then, that was primarily above code for Energy Star, but we were still doing a lot of the same testing that we're doing today. And yeah, with that, I think that I agree with Javier that the QII really, whenever I do that inspection or oftentimes have to do the training, it allows you to talk a lot about building science in general and a lot of those concepts. So it was a good conversation starter to get into the what is building science and why are we doing this.
Fantastic. And though we just heard from you, David, why don't you go ahead and you can continue to introduce yourself and as a panelist here.
Yeah, I think everybody knows who I am. You were listening to last hour. I think my favorite HERS measure has got to be airflow. Airflow is what triggered my desire to learn about this whole thing. So, as I mentioned before, a long time ago, I worked in air conditioning as a mechanical contractor, and long before that, I was working for somebody, and this is what nobody could figure out. Like, why is this home so uncomfortable? Why do we keep getting bigger air conditioners installed? Nobody could figure out the airflow thing. And I was a young whippersnapper that I'm like, well, I'm going to go find out what it is. And then I started looking for schools and classes, and I figured out what it is. And I'm like, wow, if people can get this right, they'd save like half their electric bill every month, right? And that's where it started. And so I love that. I love that measure.
That's no small thing, given especially up here in Northern California, where PG&E is just going to town on some of those rates, right?
Yeah,
Got to do that. Well, going to this idea of knitting together what David talked about in terms of what we're going to look for in the next in the next code cycle and the history, I want to ask you guys, so what do you think has been the major impact of HERS on the industry? And I don't know if anybody wants to get to volunteer to go first on this one, but otherwise I'll just go round robin again.
I mean, I'm happy to start.
Great, go for it.
Prior to HERS and this diagnostic testing thing coming to be, it was the Wild West. HVAC installations was it was crazy. I think somebody did a study once, and they said that the average duct system in California was leaking 30% or something prior to these inspections. I mean, I still remember, and I'll never, I'll take the name to my grave. But a company I worked for once, I remember I was young, and they said, I remember the super of every project going, is this permitted or not? Right? Is the project permitted out to the boss? And will there be HERS or not? That's one of those questions, right? And then the answer would make the difference on how things were installed. Oh, that means we need bigger ducts. That means we need tighter ducts. We need, you know, this and that. And I think the idea of HERS has completely changed how things are installed in California. So I mean, I think it's a huge impact. Without it, we'd still be. I mean, I've been in homes where they complain. Homeowners complain that they're spending $1,000 a month on the electric bill, and then you take a look at why, and you go, oh. And did you pull a permit? Did you get a HERS test done? What's that? Well, I can tell you why you're spending $1,000 a month on electricity, and we can show them. So I think it's amazing. I think it's made a huge impact.
Yeah.
And that's just mechanical changeouts. It's another world for new construction. California is #1 in the country right now in terms of energy efficiency for homes by a margin of 2 or 100%. More than everybody else. If you know the national scores for homes and their efficiency levels, we are twice as good.
That's
so
awesome.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
huge. And that's
You know,
because of our
for-
mandatory program.
Yeah, Javier.
For me, started a long time ago. My first assessment was for weatherization programs, and you know the testing that we did, duct testing and blower door testing, and the overall assessment of the home. And after a few months, a couple of months of doing that type of work, was like, I was amazed that I said, why isn't everybody doing this? You know, why is it just low income programs doing it right now? And just started my interest on, you know, somebody's got to be doing this. And, you know, that came across the CalSource training, and I decided, oh, I got to do this. You know, I got to get certified and start doing this for the rest of the folks here in California.
Yeah, that's great. Rob, how about you? Or Mike? Or yeah, I
Yeah,
have to get you to Mike.
Sure, I'll go. Is
Okay.
that all right, Rob?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. You're good.
Okay, I feel at least on a personal level, my biggest influence would be similar to David's, but it's education with installers. You spend, whether it's QII or HVAC, I spent much more. I mean, I enjoy the HVAC systems much more because of the engineering involved, and it's, I don't know, I just enjoy it more. But the amount of time I spend with my contractors, explaining the different measures and how to comply and best practices, and that's the most rewarding for me. And I think that is the biggest impact that I have on as a HERS rater.
Nice. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's very similar. Thinking back, like I said, you know, in the early 2000s, before, you know, any building department was asking for HERS or requiring HERS, you know, it was all my area where I focused in was production builders that were they wanted to participate in Energy Star, and so they required things like we were doing insulation inspections before QII became a thing, and duct testing and blower doors and airflows, and even mechanical designs. You know, we'd have builders that would pay to have a mechanical design done by a mechanical engineer, and then they'd let their contractor come in and do a site-built install. You know, and so the amount of education and time that was spent, you know, just training everybody to build them up, you know, from today looking back, it's come a long ways, and yeah, I don't see it going going anywhere. And you hear the Energy Commission folks as they talk, and you start hearing the things about, okay, now they want energy code compliance raters, and well, there's a lot more to energy code compliance than just HERS ratings, and building departments oftentimes don't have the staff or the time to deal with that. So it's going to be an interesting world to see where HERS or ECC, as we'll come to know it here pretty soon, where that's going to take us.
That's great, Rob. Yeah, and I think, you know, that's really the big question is, you know, we've had this impact, we have had this evolution, and now we're looking at sort of this and continuing of California trying to continue to push the envelope, no pun intended, on how we make our buildings even better. We have new equipment, which is kind of interesting. That's going to be changing how the houses are even designed. So yeah, I want to talk now about, you know, as we think about these changes that are coming down the road, what do you think those impacts are going to be on either our customers and our contractors, kind of in the industry as a whole? I'm really curious what folks are thinking here. And I'm going to start here. Maybe Javier, do you want to start us off this time?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things that I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years. One of them is the designers pushing for more energy efficiency, pushing for QII or pushing for other things other than just the norm. So I'm seeing that on the designs that are coming out. The other thing is the contractors. There's a new wave of contractors that are a lot more open-minded. They're younger, they want to learn, and they open to more training. One of my new contractors that I started about 3 years ago was said, "Hey, can you tell us what needs to be done in this home?" And I said, "Okay, well, I'll be there, but make sure that you have everybody there." So what we did, I took my TV, hung it up on the 2x4s, and we started with a presentation on what was going on. And the funny thing was that everybody decided, you know what, let's go sit down because there's some stuff going on in there. We never seen a TV in here, so maybe there's a movie or something. And the great thing about it was that the actual installers, the guys that don't have, they're just basically laborers, but they're the ones that doing a lot of the installation, a lot of detail that needs to be done. They were there, and that to me was the best training ever because those guys actually saw what needed to be done instead of having just the contractor learn, and then hopefully he'll tell his workers what needs to be done. So to me, the new wave of contractors and the designers pushing for more, energy efficiency.
And you think, it's kind of interesting you talk about that kind of training, Javier. Do you think you're going to continue to kind of do that kind of thing with these new changes? Well, is there a lot of training that will have to be done?
It does, because it makes my job easier, because when I can get a whole group of people to sit down for 40 minutes and learn a lot of the things that need to be done in order for the house to pass, the easier and the smoother the process, the project is going to go. And we're not going to run down at the end of the project and then decide that there's a lot of issues that are not passing. So yeah.
Mike, what do you think? What are some of these big changes going to do for your work, customers and contractors you're working with?
To be perfectly honest, I think it's going to increase costs.
Mm-hmm.
The equipment's going up. Short-term costs. I think the long-term costs over the life of the equipment, the energy usage will offset it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some very good equipment coming out, like the zero temperature heat pumps, so you don't have to rely on heat strips, et cetera. But the upfront costs, which by the way are, a lot of are offset by rebates and by the 3C REN program. But I think people might have a little sticker shock at the initial costs of implementation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got stories of my own for that one. Rahab, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, and I'm sure David as well, being at the provider level gives us a little bit different perspective. David, when he was going through the presentation and talking about there's significant changes happening in the HERS world and the HERS raters and moving it from Title 20 into Title 24 and all these separations. But I think overall net positive for the community and for everyone overall, right? It's giving us more ability to do what we need to do as a provider, and it's clarifying a lot of things that needed to be clarified. So I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, there's a couple of bugs in there that some of us aren't too happy about or aren't quite sure how it's going to work out. But overall, I'm really looking forward to what that's going to allow us to do as a provider in the coming years to just keep improving on the program and keeping those raters educated so that they can educate the contractors and get everybody on board.
Nice. David, how about you?
So, I know these impacts, there's going to be a lot of impact in this. what Mike said made a lot of sense. There's this additional cost. It feels like it's going to cost more money. in the beginning. Long term, the hope is that it does get, we see the benefits of it. But something that a lot of people may not be aware of is that there's this huge movement across the country right now. And it's really being led by what's happened here in the state of California. Other states are taking notice. The federal government is taking notice. And they recognize that there is a lot happening here that is different. And we have this energy conservation, energy efficiency model kind of figured out. So now there's a bunch of federal money coming in, there's state money coming in. There's, everybody knows about the IRA thing, the money being doled out. All that's coming in and it's tied to what we do. So we're really we're at the spearhead of all of this. We are changing the face of California, but not just California, the country, and eventually other countries are going to take notice of what we're doing. So it's amazing. I know that there's an additional cost in the beginning. I think there is. That's how I feel, but there's also money being doled out to try to cover that. So.
Yeah, great. So we have some questions from the chat. Let's go through those. I mean, the first one was a question by Jennifer. Just and maybe this is going to be for Rob or David, if they know how many raters we have in California, and do you think we're going to get a big increase in raters or CEC or what is it? The ECC raters.
ECC raters.
In anticipation. Anybody know?
I don't know, Rob. I'm guessing we have over 1,000 raters in California.
It's kind of hard to kind of hard to know exactly where that's at, but yeah, that's a good ballpark, and I'm sure CalCerts is seeing the same thing. But yeah, there's new folks coming through the training program all the time, so they're definitely coming in quicker than they're going out.
So here's something that other folks, the mechanical changeouts, right? I think there's a bunch of studies been done, and the belief is that that only something like 10-15% of mechanical changeouts are actually permitted. Right? That's the current belief. And I've heard, and I've had, I don't want to call them backroom conversation. I think Rob's been involved in the same ones where they're talking about, well, we're going to deal with that soon, right? That's the next step. And if it goes from 10 to 15% compliance or people pulling permits to 85%, can you imagine? Like, there's no way there's enough raters right now. So they need to get this thing built up. We need to get as many raters involved. I think we're at the beginning. The sky's the limit. And what if this becomes adopted in other states, and the rest of the country? I think there's a lot more raters. We need a lot more.
Yeah. All right, here's one question from Lynn. How will existing conditions verifications be affected? Who wants to take that one on?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So there's really no changes that I've seen in the proposed code regarding the existing conditions. So that is going to remain the same as what we've been doing. The one caveat to that would be is if you were doing the HERS verification of existing conditions and there was some familial relationship there, that would then throw a wrench in your works. But otherwise, the protocols for doing that are remaining the same for 2025.
All right, great. So here's a good question from Joe. Has the CEC considered creating a statewide list of the compliance with the HERS registry based on jurisdictions? It seems that if a building department doesn't bother to check the registries, that there's nobody that would push them to check compliance. So that's kind of a multifaceted. So maybe David and Rob, you guys might volley this one back and forth.
Yeah, I am pretty sure we've mentioned that a couple of times. I don't know if they're considering it. I'm guessing there's a lot of cost involved in figuring out how to do that, because now you got to connect everybody, right? The entire state. So I don't know the answer, Joe. I don't. I don't. Maybe Rob, if you know the answer, but I haven't heard of any plans.
No. I think the CEC at this point is still in data analytical mode, trying to figure out, if this is a problem that they need to address and how big of a problem. They look at the data that we have in our database, and same thing with CalCerts, right? So they mine that, they analyze it, and use that to drive. And then there's also this kind of a strange relationship between the CEC and building departments, as far as what the CEC can require them to do And so then that's another difficult angle that they've got to try and work with. But CEC is aware of it, but yeah, I don't think there's really anything in the works right now other than they're continuing to collect and analyze the data.
Let me ask Mike and Javier kind of a sort of side angle on this compliance question, because one of the things I've noted is that the RENs, who we are being hosted by today, are offering rebates, and they're often requiring a permit in order to get that rebate. How is that helping in terms of compliance? Are you seeing some changes there? And I'm curious, either one of you, if you have seen that.
For sure. I mean, at this point, pull permits for contractors. I don't know if I'm going to be allowed to do that going forward, but anything that I can do to help with compliance, because to be perfectly honest, if nobody pulls a permit, I don't work. So I mean, I know that's very it's a very myopic viewpoint, but that's the truth. And until and David said 10 to 15%. I heard the CEC estimated 95% are not permitted. So,
wow,
that's when I was at one of those hearings.
I believe it. But I believe it.
But and yeah, I would say that's an accurate estimate.
Javier, did you want to
change outs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard something like 70% not permitted. One of the things that I noticed from the building department is that for some reason they're not really maybe it is they don't want to get themselves in trouble. They don't want to refer HERS raters or things like that. The referrals that I have gotten from building departments have been people that have been basically cited that there's an issue in the inspector side, give them a ticket for having windows or something. And the homeowners just lost and said, I didn't know anything about Title 24. Somebody put these windows in here 6 months ago. Can you help me? At that point, they will. I will get a referral. Say, can you come and help this gentleman here? But they usually try to stay away from maybe being giving names out of raiders in the city because they're afraid that if something happens they might be liable. So yeah, no, there's no connection there, like a positive connection. Say, here, go call these guys up and have your permit your project rated.
Yeah, great. Let's see, Jennifer asked, do you think there is a world in which California will require builders contractor continuation credits for licensure that could be taught by the HERS providers?
God, I hope so. We're doing it for free now. That would be amazing. Jennifer, please let us know if you have any involvement in any of this stuff, because we definitely want to get involved.
That's great. Nico, is there anything in 2025 Energy Code that helps enforce HERS rating for HVAC replacement work or alterations?
Yeah, the energy code isn't going to, it's a separate problem. So the CEC, they recognize it as a problem. We've all thrown out different numbers, but the numbers are not good, right? As the number of non-permitted jobs. There's been several, meetings and forums and ideas thrown around. My understanding that the CEC is once again taking this up, and they are trying to find a solution. What that solution is or how successful it's going to be is to be seen. But here in the next year or two, I think that we should see something coming out from the CEC on their proposed approach as to how they can address that and get permit compliance numbers up.
Okay, so let me ask a question another question to all of you. We have this new transition, you got a new name, you kind of have some new kind of elements around this, some of the stuff that David outlined. What do you think is required to make this transition to this new protocol a success? We want to make this, easy for people. There was a lot of detail that David provided us and a lot of ins and outs. And so, how is it successful for each of you? Anybody want to start off on that one? Okay, Mike.
I don't think it's really going to affect the general population very much at all. The new code requirements, or what we're discussing here mostly is just between the building department, the providers, and the HERS raters. I mean, that's where the biggest changes are. Am I correct or no?
Oh,
Yeah, but
that's
even
part
there,
of
do you
it.
see changes that, between building departments and, is that how's that gonna work? Is that gonna be sick, do you, because I know we always know building departments have a lot on their plates, right? And the energy code sometimes isn't their number one thing. It's safety and health. So I don't know if there's anything there that needs to also be done.
Yeah, Mike, I can throw in a little bit, Mike. One of the things is, and I'm guessing Mike and Javier probably can feel this more than anybody, is that the HERS raters are the only ones that are educating anybody. What we need is more education for stakeholders. Okay, so these builders, especially general contractors, people who do custom homes and not doing production housing, they have no clue, right? They'll get to the job. Mike or Javier will show up on a job and they'll go, and the job is finished, and they'll go, we need this thing called QII. And Mike and Javier are like, but your house is done. Right?
Don't forget the ducts and conditioned spaces too.
That's right. That's right. So there needs to be more education. This is something that I've yelled from the top of my lungs for many, many years, saying there needs to be another arm or something that happens out there that makes it so the HERS raters aren't the only folks training everybody involved. Although I think that's great as well, but then there needs to be some incentive for the HERS raters to do that. Right, because it gets very difficult. I mean, I'm guessing Mike and have you guys probably spend hours explaining something to somebody, but you can't charge them a whole bunch of money for it, right? So there needs to be that needs to happen better. Stakeholders need to be aware of the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we come a long way. My training was done through Cal Certs. I'm glad that Cheers is here also, so that we can, the amount of learning and education going back and forth is really great. The one thing that's doing a big impact in our Tri-County area is the 3C REN, where we're actually meeting contractors out at the sites, at the supply stores, and we're providing them with that education that's out there. ACE, it's been great. But I think that ACE is more for guys that are already in it, and we know we can spend a little bit of time knowing the subject that we want. But the 3C REN just comes out like, hey, we got construction 101. If you want to get started and learn all these basic things so that you continue your construction career, it's really great. And at the time when I took my training, you had to go down to Arwindale, Downey, spend a week over there, paid for it, and that was really tough for somebody getting started. So I think that the 3C REN and some of these other agencies like that, they're putting a tremendous monies into training the new construction companies. And some of the certifications are still now they're available and they're free of cost, so to the person taking the test. So I think that's great.
That's great. Hey, Rob, how about you, Rob?
Yeah, well, my mind just went blank on me. What was the question?
So how do we make this?
Still listening to what he was saying.
It was good.
What was
right, yeah. Education, we got to do that.
Yes.
What is the transition to this new protocol? What do we need to do to make sure it's a success? And it may be just how do we make HERS in general a success, but yeah, this transition as well.
Yeah, and this is something that we all deal with every 3 years, right? The code changes, new things roll out. The providers, we go to the HERS raters and say, here's what's changing, and they get updated on that training. And then oftentimes they'll have their clients, whether it's builders or whatnot, the smaller guys, the custom builders, the HVAC alterations contractors, they're not as likely to be as aware of what's happening, where your production builders, they usually are a little bit more educated, but not always. So yeah, it just really comes down to not only the raters, but then you look at the RENs, you look at the utilities, right? A lot of the utility companies, have their programs. And I know we reach out to them and work with them as well to try and have these types of programs available. Oftentimes in person's difficult, but thankfully, one good thing that came out of COVID, if you could say that, is just this expansion of this virtual world where we can have these meetings and these trainings. And we need to see more of that so that it's there and available to all of the parties that need to get out and see what's happening.
All right, let me ask the next question. And Jordan laughed at me earlier when I tried to use this Shakespearean quote here, but you have a new name potentially coming out here, and branding, and consumers can get confused enough. How do you think this is going to play out, or is it just inside ball game and nobody really cares or knows? Just kind of curious. What do you guys think you want to do, and maybe also how does an organization like 3C REN help with this education of like the brand and what making a differentiation? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in there.
I'll jump in.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll jump in really quick. Yeah. So the CEC, they've made it pretty clear that in their code language, they have a need to distinguish between HERS and ECC, but they have no desire to force it on the industry. So I think this is going to be one of those things that's it's going to take a little bit of time as we start to use the different language. Raider still stays the same, and so everybody's going to most likely either just drop the HERS or it's just Raiders and what Raiders do. But I think this is going to be a thing of time as we start changing our own internal lingo. That lingo out in the marketplace will start to change, but it's not going to be overnight. It's going to be something that's going to take years to really take hold out there in the marketplace.
You can be Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
It would be Raiders of the Lost Ek.
There we go. Yeah, Mike, what were you going to add to this?
Well, I thought we were technicians, not Raiders anymore, but I don't know. I guess that will be defined in the future. But I would like to say that probably once a week I hear, I've been doing this 40 years and I don't know who you are or what you do. So I don't think what they call us really matters because nobody knows anyway.
Thereby arose by any other name.
Yeah, I think name has a lot to do with it. For years I tried to explain weatherization to my clients, and it was so hard to get that across, and nobody was going with it. No, it went nowhere, right? And then you have companies like Nike, where you can just see the little sign, and you know that it's like, just do it, So I wish they would spend some time with something that would be kind of nice and marketable for everybody else, instead of coming out with all these. I was thinking, do I need to change my company name now because it's Energy Conservation Consultants, ECC? Is it gonna what are you guys thinking? So yeah, it's kind of, I think name's got a lot to do with it.
You should trademark that, and they can pay you for that. The ECC. David, want to add anything to that?
Not really. Just to reiterate what Rob said, the commission said you can continue using HERS Raider. There's no requirement to ECC, but it's gonna happen. We're all gonna switch over unless a lot of you here can make a good argument as to why it shouldn't be ECC, and I think that a few of you already have. But they're going to change it no matter what. What I understand it to be is they're going to change it to something, but if you can come up with something better, put it out there.
That's great. Okay, so let's see. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to go to kind of our final panel question here. So this is your chance to say your last piece here, everybody on the panel. And really, this is that future-looking thing. So what do you want to see in future code cycles that didn't make it in this one, that's going to make everybody the magic wand, if you will? So David, I'll have you start, and then we'll just go down the line.
Okay, so mine might get me in trouble, but
That's
I'm going
okay.
to say it anyways. I would like to see a simplification of the energy code. I think it is extremely complex. People like me and Rob have been doing this for a while, and we do it all day, every day. So we kind of understand the little nuances of what connects to what. But to expect and raters do it a lot too, but not at that level. To expect a builder and everybody involved to understand the energy code to this level it's a tough thing to do. So I would love to see it simplified. I train a lot of building departments, and one of the primary complaints from building inspectors is this is too complex. Like, why doesn't it follow like the ICC style of explaining things, right? I'm not saying that that's the best way. I'm just saying that's the primary thing they say to me. So I would love simplification. If everybody knows that we have the building energy efficiency standards, that's book number 1, right? The standards. We have the reference appendices. We have the RCM, we have the ACM, we have the DRM, we have, and then they all point to each other. You look at one book, like I'm reading this reference about duct leakage, it says, well, go to the reference appendices this, the RCM this, and this. And you're like, holy smokes. And you go there and you go, okay, go back over here. Right. So I know it's a big thing. The commission that does their best. I have all the respect in the world for them, but a simplification of that code, that's what I want to see in the future. So everybody can do it. And frankly, I know we're trying to do a really good job, but my biggest concern a lot of times when these new codes come out and it's more stringent, especially in the mechanical changeout market, is that it drives people underground. That's my main concern. They go, whoa, I'm going to figure out every way possible not to pull a permit because, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what an HRV is, right? So my argument previously has always been, hey, why don't you guys make this simpler? Make it easier to meet, but figure out how to get everybody to do it instead of making it harder for the few percentage of people that do this, right? Because you're going to just keep driving everybody on the ground. So that's my take. That's what I want to see.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
Very good. That's right.
Yeah. Javier, how about you?
I would like to see statewide just maybe a commercial that says, okay, if you're going to build something, this is where you start, this is who you get, and then go with it. This is why you get a permit. I never see anything like that promoting the contractors, promoting the HERS raters, or any permitting things like that. They're like, they just kind of, for some reason, apparently it doesn't exist in California because I never seen it on TV or on radio. The HERS rater profession is not sustainable. It's not a sustainable business because you're not testing every single day. And if you think that you're gonna go and be a HERS rater and you're gonna have this great business, it's gonna be really tough because you don't test every day. There's gonna be days where you're waiting for one client. So I think that's what's gonna maybe drive the needles. If people start seeing, oh yeah, call that HERS rater and that contractor and see if we can get something done here in this home. So that I'd like to see that.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, how about you?
Sorry, I was mesmerized by everyone else. I actually have been complaining about what David had mentioned for to anyone that will listen as far as compliance goes. Depending on what your number is, but when you're taking a small group of people who are trying to comply while you have a large group of people, especially in changeouts, who are just trying to, bringing equipment from another country with model numbers that aren't in the directory, not having a contractor's license, or even something as simple as using analog gauges. Those are the people that we need to be addressing. The people that are complying now, that 5% or the 10 or the 15, why don't we let everybody else catch up before we start making it more difficult for them to comply? And like David said, simplify it to where you don't have to. Can you imagine trying to figure out how to do this if you didn't have the little what do they call the blue blue things in the books that just automatically take you over to the reference, because you're referencing 4 different documents.
Give me the links. Yeah.
The links, yeah,
absolutely. There's got to be a way. Yeah, Rob, how about you? Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I think as to what Javier was saying, how about maybe getting the CLSB involved? If somebody gets their C20 license, they would get references onto for what is required when you're doing an HVAC installation or insulation. Also, maybe, I mean, incrementally, I always shoot low. Maybe CalCerts and Cheers could get together and provide building departments with some sort of educational handout, or even something like what Energy Coast ACE provides, but something that's provided to building departments so they can, if someone pulls a permit for HVAC, part of the package would include the HERS measures that will be required, and what triggers them, and what they need to do, and when that person needs to be involved.
That's great. Rob, how about you? Last chance.
Yeah, I think something that everybody would like to see is less paperwork. We keep getting told that we're gonna have less paperwork and less forms, and then here in the most recent code there was a whole new class of forms introduced. And so this kind of goes along with a couple of the different comments. Is simplification would go a long ways to making life easier for everybody, and also increasing compliance, right? The HERS raters spend a lot of time filling out paperwork for their contractors because the contractors don't know how to do it. And the providers, we try to make that as easy as possible for them where we can, but they're still, if I got to fill out that many forms and then I got to do it a second time and all of that. So that's something that I'd really like to see, and I think the raters would agree, is let's along with streamlining the code, let's make sure we include the paperwork with that, and get the form numbers down to a reasonable number, so that everybody's more likely to be able to go in and fill those documents out.
That's great. Well, thank you all for such a great conversation here. I think we all learned a ton. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Jordan to take us to the next step.
Thanks, Mindy. I am going to just unpin our panelists. And while I'm doing that, if you wouldn't mind sharing our slide deck again, Cassie, that would be great.
Sorry, my internet dropped off, and when I disconnected, I think I might not be co-host anymore. Let me see.
Sorry about that, Cassie.
Oh, I can also share my screen, Cassie.
That'd be great.
Hold on 1 second.
And while we're getting that up, just a virtual round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much, all four of you. Really appreciate your time and effort and participation in this forum. We're wrapping up, and I'm going to just kind of share a little bit about what we do at 3C REN, especially with yet another ECC program called Energy Code Connect. I was sharing with David, and we wrote some comments saying that, can't you just put instead of ECC, Energy Code Compliance, Energy Code Verification? That would maybe streamline this a little bit and make it more germane to what it is that a HERS rater does. So again, hello everybody. Thank you again for joining us. Jordan Garbayo with the County of SLO and Tri-County Regional Energy Network. Also former 2013 and 2016 HERS rater for Whole House. So this is all very near and dear to my heart. At one point, I put in the chat my envelope brothers for touting QII and the importance of that measure, which is also my favorite and top of the food chain, in my opinion, for energy efficiency. So with that, I'm just going to jump in. So if you can go to the next slide there, Mindy. I'm just going to talk briefly about what Tri-County Regional Energy Network is. We are a joint collaborative between 3 counties, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura, to bring energy efficiency programming from ratepayer dollars. So that small percentage we all pay on our investor-owned utility bills, whether it's PG&E, SoCal Edison, or SoCal Gas, to bring programming to our region that otherwise wouldn't be served by other programs that are typically used in larger, more populous regions of the state. So we currently have services for building professionals, which is what we're talking about today, households, small to medium businesses, agriculture and farmers, as well as emergency use facilities. Next slide, please. So these are our current programs right now. The other ones that I mentioned earlier are in development. We're working on them, so we'll have really nifty logos for them here in the very near future. We have our home energy savings program, which is designed around providing retrofit incentives for multifamily and single family homes. We have our building performance training, which is designed around providing training and support for building professionals around energy efficiency and electrification across the region. And we have our Energy Code Connect program, which is also designed around building professionals to provide education, support, comprehension, and enforcement around the Energy Code, as well as the Cal Green building standards. Next slide, please. So for Energy Code Connect, and this is kind of where I'm going with the where do we go from here? We have three services that we offer to building professionals. We have our Energy Code Coach, which is an over the phone, online, in person, in the field service that we offer to folks. It's all completely free. They provide in-depth analysis and support, as well as interpretation of that very complex energy code for building professionals on both sides of the aisle. So planners, inspectors, contractors, designers, etc. Right? Even homeowners. We've had homeowners ask questions about energy code, which is always like my favorite, because we just get to explain how complicated this to them, and they just glaze over, which is really fun. Thank you. So we have trainings and forums, and we also have the regional forums, which is what we're doing today, and we also have some reach code support as well. So yeah, next slide, Mindy. So I already kind of talked about our Energy Code Coach support service. This is really designed to be boots on the ground support, and an offering that is really designed to get you answers when you need them. So we have customizable training opportunities through that program or through that service, and like I said, we have a web form through 3cren.org. We have our hotline. Actually, I think that hotline is out of date, but we have it. It's on our website as well. And people send emails just to our Energy Code Coach as well, and to me, and I just direct them to folks. We guarantee a response time within 24 hours and really try to make the energy code more tangible and easier to adhere to. Next slide, please. We also have tons of training. I think Javier, shared that we have Energy Code 101 all the way up to the nitty gritty around heat pump technologies and/or QII. If you're looking for more in-depth focused trainings, would encourage you to go to 3cren.org to see all of our live trainings that are coming down the pipe. We also have in the past offered HERS Rater trainings. We were offering that through CalCerts. Cheers currently offers HERS Rater training for free if you're a SoCal Gas customer, which everybody in our territory is, which is very exciting. We also offer trainings for certified energy analysts, as well as trainings around ADUs and existing additions and alterations for folks, and it's really exciting stuff. Next slide, please. We also offer reach code support services. That was kind of hampered last year with a decision for the city of Berkeley that slowed us down a little bit, but that service is also there for jurisdictions looking to develop and implement reach codes. So we offer that service as well. Next slide. Oh, just before I would say closing remarks, I will just add that, and sorry, I should have had this slide in there, and there's some links in this deck for all of our offerings. But Energy Code ACE is a huge partner for us. They help us, and I'm constantly sending over their tools and resources to building departments as well as contractors and designers across the region. KBEC is also a great resource. Our HERS providers, CalCerts and Cheers, are also wonderful at supporting the work we do. Hence why they're here, which is great. And we really lean on those partnerships to make sure that our building professionals across the region get the right information and the right tools and resources available to them. So we really look to offer and provide as much value as we can. And if there's any concerns or needs out there, we often encourage our participants for these forums, our classes, our Energy Code Coach support service, anything we do, to reach out to us, because we are able to be nimble. And if there's a great idea that you think can change the landscape, let us know, because we'd like to figure out a way to do that together. So with that, I'll be quiet, hand you off back to Mindy for some closing remarks, and we'll get you out of here. So thank you again, everyone, for being here with us. We really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jordan. And thank you all. I just wanted to put this screen up so you can always go to the 3C REN website and get that information. You will be getting a survey at via email, I believe, just to please go ahead and answer that so we can continue to improve, enhance these different forums. Jordan, just quickly, our next forum, kind of generally speaking, do we have a time frame? It's going to be more fall, I assume.
Yeah, we'll likely be in fall, hopefully in person.
Yeah.
Looking for something big and grand. We're excited about it, but I can't really say more about that yet.
Well, it's titillating. It's really exciting. You guys have to stay on top to get that. I think one of the couple of things that I thought came out of today, which is notable, is Californians, we're special. Thank you, Cassie, because, we do want to have this really super complex place and do all this really incredible work, but it has created a lot of complexity. And so this idea that our panelists talked about, which is simplify, 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 is a good thing for us all to think about. So hopefully, at some point we'll be able to take a pause from the changes and the restricting and actually make that simple, because I've heard that my entire career working at the CEC and beyond. I think, this idea of providing more information for building departments that actually helps share out what are those required HERS measures is a good one. And, that seems to be something that, our friends at the 3C REN work with the building departments a lot and provide materials. Maybe that's something that they could do. I think that's one last thing I'll just say, as your local friendly REN is a great resource for all of these things to help think about how we can do that education and do it together. So it's always great when we get everybody together and start talking about these things. And so just want to say thank you to David for his great presentation also at the beginning. I think that really set us off right. And thank you, Cassie, for the background on all that. And thank you for all the panelists who had a great conversation today, Mike, Javier, and Rob. So I think that is about it today. Nothing else on this side. So thanks, and stay tuned for the next event. And it looks like we have a poll up here. So please feel free to add your thoughts.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate the time and for joining us today.
Yes, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.